The pilgrimage to the Firemouth is a long, arduous journey, stretching several thousand miles from the Black Mountains in the west to the Mountains of Morn far to the east. And for Skrag and his ogres, they'll be marching through the chaos-corrupted marshlands of Kelp and Coal Dust, when suddenly, the Skelly Boys attack, and the hills come undead with the sounds of their dooting. What do they want? Why are they here? I don't know. I didn't feel like writing a narrative for it. So Tomb Kings and Ogre Kingdoms this time. Once again, the thematics are off the chain. Skrag the Slaughterer has some horrifically mutated conjoined Noblars on his cauldron. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, there are definitely some bugs in this build. Not a big deal, but I would advise him to not turn around because they're freakier than Chaos Spawn. Skrag, in my opinion, is not a very good lord. I think he's objectively worse than Slaughtermasters and is insanely easy to snipe out. But like I said, going for a themed build here, and if you're playing the Gorger Kingdoms, you need the Cauldron of the Great Maw. Now, I have completely stripped him of spells, which will make it harder for him to fill his pot and make his Gorgers better, but Fire Magic is simply better versus Tomb Kings, and we are playing the Firemouth sub-faction, so a Firebelly was pretty much a necessity. My Luchador from Nacho Libre has Cascading Fire Cloak, Fireball, Burning Head, and Flaming Sword of Ruin. It's actually pretty solid for dueling Tomb Kings characters as well. Got 4 Gorgers, 2 Ogre Bulls, and a unit of Iron Guts in the rear, who are pretty good at beating down constructs with their high AP, and we'll talk a lot about Gorgers perhaps after this battle. Now, I typically wouldn't recommend Iron Guts as your core, but with 1 or 2 just to beat down on armored stuff, I think they are a really good supplement to many Ogre builds. And with an ambush wing out to the east and an Ironblaster set up top, ready to snipe out some animated statues, we're ready to get this thing popping. And the Ironblaster may just be my most important unit in this battle. It's really good at killing constructs, and for Heir of Carthage and the Tomb Kings, there are quite a few targets that will be important to eliminate early. On the flip side are the Sentinels of the Black Pyramid, led by a Necrosphinx, Sepulchral Stalkers, and Settra the Imperishable, O King of Kings. Unfortunately, the Necrosphinx is a unit that I despise, which is such a shame because it's one of the best models in the trilogy. It's just so freaking cool, but in my experience, they rarely do anything useful, and I don't know why, looking at their stats, but if it's to find a niche anywhere, against the Ogre Kingdoms would certainly be a good place for it to kill lots of things with those twin scything blades. Sepulchral Stalkers are going to be really strong in Game 3, good versus demons with their magic attacks, good versus ogres for their bonus for large and shooting, just a good unit, but kind of squishy, so they do need some babysitting. Shopty Great Bows, tons of spears, and Tomb Guard Halberds, go figure. Going all in with the anti-large against the ogre seems to be the correct call. And finally, Settra with his homeboy Tomb Prince, both on horseback to retain their halberd property. So, pretty scary build from the Khemri Ka. Might be a tough nut to crack, but my Noblard Trapper wing has a big role to play from the shadows. Really underrated unit, and you'll see why in a little bit. 2 more Gorgers out on this flank as well. Might be able to get some hammer and anvils off and use them a little bit like ambushing cavalry, which should be fun. So, Kelp and Coal Dust is a really small map. Both armies are going to clash pretty much immediately. They're already in artillery range, and obviously the first thing I want to kill is the most expensive anti-large AP unit on the other side of the field. Necrosphinx will be the target of the Ironblaster. Noblars will move up, and I was thinking about kiting here, but realized there wasn't going to be a whole lot of room for me to maneuver. I could have pulled back behind the cliff, given my Ironblaster a little bit more time to fire, but I'm actually not particularly worried about a straight-up fight because the ambush wing's going to come in from behind, and we might be able to get a full surround off and put a lot of pressure on those Sepulchral Stalkers. As long as those are not shooting into my high-value units, like Skrag the Slaughterer, my Gorgers, or my Iron Guts, I'm going to be okay in the opening stages of this combat. Nice Burning Head, going to catch out the Tomb Guard and the Skeleton Spearmen. And if the Ironblaster is my most important unit, then the Firebelly is not far behind. Tomb Guard only have, what, 55, 60 armor? Skeletons even less, so Burning Head, despite eating some nerfs, is still a great wave clear spell for clearing out the chaff, which is necessary because Noblars and Ogre Bulls don't really like fighting undead, especially when they have spears or halberds. The bigger question is, in these opening stages, what do I do about that Necrosphinx, which, despite the fact that I think the unit kind of sucks, is still going to rip through large targets if I let it. So for now, game plan is to stuff it up, get the Iron Guts chunking it down, and continue firing into its handsome marble carved face until it's unrecognizable. Downside to that strat being Ogre Cannons aren't hyper accurate, and friendly fire does occasionally occur. 3 of my Iron Guts killed by shrapnel up the butt. Ouch! Cascading Fire Cloak down on the Noblars to keep them in the fight, and screening for my Armored Bulls, and Necrosphinx getting pounded by the Firebelly too. So good engagement over there. Noblard Trappers have played their hand. They're moving into the flanking position, and now they can fire into the Tomb Guard from the unshielded side, or perhaps more importantly, into those Sepulchral Stalkers. And yeah, the Necrosphinx is down past half HP. Iron Guts are doing a tremendous job there. I can't... Nalblars are beginning to rout. Yeah, so Cascading Fire Cloak maybe wasn't worth it. They have such bad leadership. If Terra gets near them, they're going to run no matter what. And the Gorgers are into the back line, but they're going to be forced to fight things they really don't want to without a lot of meat shields up front. It's a nice Usef's Incantation of Desiccation. Minus 24 melee attack, minus 24 melee defense in an AoE, shutting down that entire flank. Settra is going to be a problem this game. There's no question about it. He's a scary boy. I don't have anything that can outduel him, so pretty much not even going to try. Pretty much just have to ignore him as a Flaming Sword of Ruin goes down in the center to give those Gorgers some extra weapon damage and flaming attacks. Now, the Nalblars Trappers are getting great focus fire into these Sepulchral Stalkers, and there's a Dismember on the Necrosphinx as it attempts to escape. It's moving real slow, and if it moves into those Nalblars Trappers, it'll start moving even slower, and I've completely overwhelmed the Tomb King's left flank, but realizing that the Gorgers can't stay in melee with all these halberds and all these spears around while they're getting shot by skeleton horse archers. That's a really good pick, by the way. Skeleton horse archers have the mobility to escape from all of these ogre infantry and monstrous infantry, and their focus fire is pretty brutal because a lot of my stuff has between 10 and 30 armor. Ironblasters continuing to rack up serious value shooting into the Ushabti Greatbows, who have had to move into my own lines essentially, filling the void where the Nalblars all routed off. Now shooting into the Sepulchral Stalkers down the flank, and another brutal shot. And that Iron Blaster is kicking ass, but those are some gorgeous close-range volleys from these Sepulchral Stalkers, spitting poison and magic attacks into the rear of my Gorgers, which then forces them into melee to stop them from shooting, but they have bonus versus large, so it's just going to be goodnight, sweet prince, for my unbreakable hungry boys. The famished freaks are getting their ass kicked right now, a lot of them real low, being shot to pieces by the skeleton archers, but I have the Necrosphinx isolated, and with Nalblars Traps, Iron Guts, the Firebelly, and even Skrag marching his way over, I do not think that that construct will be able to escape, and meanwhile, nothing has been done to shut down the Iron Blaster, which continues to reap a terrible toll, destroying these Stalkers with flanking shots, and I think both of them are about to crumble out. One of them certainly already has, the other one is crumbling now. Settra and the Tomb Prince are on the cannon, while the Necrosphinx is in its death throes. Skrag and his Nalblars will come over to try to zone them out. Frankly, I'm not sure Settra and the Tomb Prince would need to run away here. They decide to disengage. I think they could have stayed on the cannon. Skrag isn't particularly threatening in duels against large targets, and they are both mounted. But to be fair, there is a lot of pretty fast stuff with high mass over here, Gorgers and the Iron Guts. So if Settra and the Tomb Prince overextended, they could get caught out and killed, and that would be hugely problematic for the undead in this one. Firebelly should swing one more time, and that'll be the end for the Necrosphinx. And you'll notice that my Gorgers and my Ogre Bulls, I pulled away from the flank. Really cool animation when the thing flops over. And basically just repositioning with the Gorgers to try to get a little bit of value out of the regen from Skrag's Cauldron of the Great Maw, which isn't really doing that much right now. Gorgeous Iron Blaster shot and Burning Head on King Nikesh's Scorpion Legion and the Tomb Guard. Skrag doesn't have a lot of kills right now, so the Cauldron of the Great Maw isn't giving them crazy regen or weapon strength at the moment, but the idea is, now that we start engaging the infantry, hopefully the Gorgers will start doing better. Now, I am going to misplay here. Watching it back, I don't think I should have committed against these infantry. I should have waited for the Nalblars to charge in first. Obviously, when you want to use monstrous infantry, you want to have some regular foot troops up front to absorb some of the damage. And I saw the isolated Tomb Guard. I thought with Skrag nearby, we could probably beat him up, and I think that's true, but I need to try to get as much value out of my Gorgers as possible. And by the way, look at that awesome sync kill animation. Now, I don't know if a Tomb Guard would actually care about getting stomped into a boiling pot. He's already boned, he's already dead, probably just climb right back out, but imagine that looks really, really cool when that's a human Empire state troop getting thrown into the pot. Also could do without the texture stretching as well. Doesn't look too great, but really cool animation. Back here, we've got Dismember slowing down the Tomb Prince and the Ushabti summon, who are running after a bunch of the Nalblars and preventing my meat shields from getting to that frontal engagement against all the Tomb Guard. Some Ogre Bulls in the background, fighting with the remnants of the Sepulchral Stalkers. More Nalblars returning from their routing earlier, and the Firebelly broke off too. I think he was in a duel with the Tomb Prince, and he did not enjoy that very much. So things are getting scary now. Usef's incantation of desiccation is debuffing my Iron Guts. Skrag is now pretty isolated, and if Settra and the Tomb Prince, well, I mean, they can pretty much go wherever they want, right? They could go after the Ironblaster and silence the cannon for good, and it seems like that's what Air's doing right now. Stalkers are actually still somehow alive with only a sliver of HP remaining. Or Settra and the Tomb Prince could go after Skrag the Slaughterer and kill him off, and he really doesn't have a lot of mass to support him, and his AP is about to rout. In fact, just did. The Iron Guts are gone. The Ironblaster is routing. Skrag is in a pretty bad spot now with Tomb Guard Halberds marching behind him, and this could get really bad for the Ogres really fast. And at this point, I was pretty much ready to call GG. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get back into this game, but the Firebelly returned, and the Gnawblars returned, and if I can find a way to shut down those Ushabti Great Bows and continue shooting in with my Gnawblar Trappers, who still have a lot of ammo and have done a lot for me so far. They straight up killed an entire unit of Sepulchral Stalkers by themselves. Then maybe we've got a chance to claw our way back in. Gorgers are unbreakable, which is helping a lot, but Skrag has routed off as well. Everything's dying in the center, and I just need to get away from Settra and focus on the important stuff right now, which is those Ushabti Great Bows, because if they're allowed to continue firing, I'm not going to be in this one for very much longer. In the background, Gnawblar Trappers are fighting off some Skeleton Horsemen. They'd be a really important unit to get back into the thick of things as well, and once again, full surround off on Ogre Bull sets up for another gorgeous burning head, and now there's pretty much no infantry remaining for the Tomb King, so things might get pretty spicy as we move into the late game. Balance Bar is in favor of the Sentinels of the Desert, but the Ogres with the Fireball on some of these important characters, especially that Tomb Prince who is flammable, Settra's flammable as well, that could be huge, and the Iron Guts charging in, Gnawblars in front, and then Dismember to prevent those Ushabti from escaping. Acceleration speed and charge speed all reduced drastically, and the armor piercing from those gigantic clubs. Shock infantry for the Ogre peoples managed to take down the constructs, and now no more shooting for the Tomb Kings either. Firebelly marching his way over. Skrag the Slaughterer has returned. You see him in the background, and now is the chance for the Ogres to continue their crusade onto the Fire Mouth. They just have to get through Settra, the Imperishable. We'll see if he can live up to his name. Here they come, both anti-large duelists, both very capable in melee, but they've got infantry to get through, and Fireball spewing forth from the Firebelly's mouth did 500 damage to the Tomb Prince, and he might be about to crumble here. Settra went around the flank, and he will finish off the Firebelly. That's a big loss for the Ogre Kingdoms, but gave a little bit more time for the Ironblaster to return and get a nasty shot into Settra the Imperishable, who will pop his Nero's incantation of protection for the 40% physical resist. Tomb Prince entirely isolated now, no more Guardian Aura for Settra, which is a big deal because Flaming Sword of Ruin was the only way they were going to be able to bypass that. They have no other magical attacks to get through physical resistance. Settra and the Skeleton Horsemen will finish off the cannon, but Skrag the Slaughterer has returned, and Ogre Bulls in the distance are marching their way back too. So it's pretty much just Settra and Skeleton Horsemen remaining. Tomb Prince, Tomb Guard, everything else is crumbling out. The cannon explodes. The Rhinoxen is dead and done and dusted. But here we go. Iron Guts, Skrag the Slaughterer, and a ton of Gnawblars. Actually, Skrag is really low. The anti-large halberd really does a number on him, but Gnawblars firing in from behind. Iron Guts moving past Settra to get the full surrounds off. Nero's incantation of protection popped once again. Such a powerful spell in this kind of scenario. Skrag just dry humping the air, trying to get some attacks in through his own infantry. One thing that Ogres have so much trouble with is getting on target through their own monstrous troops. Massacre activated on everything around Skrag for the extra base weapon damage and AP, and for the terror, but it's going to be useless. Skrag falls. He's dead. Settra outdueled him in the middle of that many troops, and now with Skrag dead, oh no, the morale shocks are setting in, and the Ogre Kingdoms are going to rout Settra the Imperishable, living up to his name. Iron Guts were the only thing that could have potentially killed him off besides Skrag, and the Gnawblars certainly aren't going to hold out anymore. Sentinels will take the game, and man, one thing that really hurt me there was the fact that army abilities for Ogres are entirely dependent on killing routing troops, and the undead don't rout. So while I was able to get a couple dismembers off and a massacre at the end game, I wasn't able to build the way up to Butcher. Giving Skrag a huge burst of HP would have been huge, but it was not to be. Skrag the Slaughterer is, as I said, pretty bad in my opinion. I think a Slaughter Master does everything he does, but better. But the Ironblaster is a really good piece of balancing. The unit was straight up deleting expensive monsters with 0 effort from max range, so its spread got nerfed a bit, but it's still an incredible artillery piece. It's still fun to use, it still does crazy damage, it still performs its role well. You just have to work a bit harder and think a bit more to use it, rather than just instantly snipe greater demons from across the map. Love where it's at right now. It's still really good. Did a great job shutting down the Stalkers and the Necrosphinx. Love it. The Gorgers, on the other hand, not as good on the balancing front. Now, don't get me wrong, they were way too good for their price. There was 0 reason they should ever be able to beat anti-large bear cav from the front, and they were overshadowing a lot of the other elements of their roster, but Gorgers were hit too hard on too many fronts at once, and that's where the Scalpel is a better tool than the Sledgehammer. It's also what happened with the Ancient Salamander back in the day. Too many successive nerfs at once that people didn't ask for, and it basically just made people not want to bring the unit at all, which is never the point of buffing or nerfing units. When you buff a unit, you don't want to make it so it's ubiquitous and that you always see it in every situation. When you nerf something, you don't want to dumpster it into unviability. If a unit's too good at something, incrementally change it slowly until it's in the right spot. And same goes for buffing units as well. So with the Gorgers, I think there was an overcorrection. I think they're frankly pretty bad right now. The fact that they were all fighting skeletons and only got 500 value each, even though they were supported by the Cauldron of the Great Maw, and Skrag ended up with 100 kills, so he would have had some good regen and buffs going for them as well. Pretty not great. I will say it's an entire army of anti-large as well for the Tomb Kings, so it is a hard counter for them. It's difficult for them to get their value back in that type of scenario, but this is true in domination, it's true in land battle. Gorgers aren't in a great spot. They could definitely use at least a few of the nerfs reverted. Not to the point where they can go back to where they were, because they were ridiculous before, but they could use a little bit of loving. So, really fun game. Hope you guys enjoyed. I think Air played that really well with the Tomb Prince and Settra. And I will see you all in the next video. Indie Pride, signing out for now.